Dick Olsher reviewed the Platinums and referred to the fact that he said at that time he could tell the difference. Now, was he actually there?
No, he wasn't there. But what happened is he got a telephone call and he said, "Hey man, this is what happened," and he said, "Bullshit, that can't be." That's quote. Exactly that.
That's what the
But it
quote
was.
said.
But he wasn't in the room.
He wasn't there. No, he wasn't there. He was
But
someplace else.
he actually says in the review of the Platinums that he was there.
He wasn't. He's
Bullshit,
false
oh,
memory.
wow.
False
You're
memory.
not supposed to lie. I've
False.
never seen that.
I don't think anybody's lying. It's false. It's just a false memory. Marjorie, you know about false memories. She knows a lot about.
I can't remember.
No.
Sound like radio.
I know about liars.
But
Sexual relations with us.
yeah. You know, maybe he came over, walked in, had a bowl of soup or a cup of coffee, and left. But he wasn't part of the listening panel. I know that.
See,
I don't think he was
in the review of the Platinums, he claims he was. But if you go to the audio critic and listen to Pete Axel said he's full of shit.
Yeah.
And actually, I like Pete's
Well, what does
review.
the Stereophile Challenge, as reported by Gordon Holt, say? Was he there or not? That would be the definitive.
It doesn't
mention
it doesn't mention him.
Okay, then he wasn't there. 'Cause I don't know.
That's just that he did it.
I know we've kind of worn this horse out, because I'm sure you've been asked this question 100,000 times, so I'm going to drag you kicking and screaming into the future. A little bird told me that you may have some plans for a very large speaker that you've got in your head. Can you give us any details about that?
Well, what I want to do is build a speaker. Imagine this little cinema ribbon you saw today. Imagine that. Imagine a lot of those little ribbons from floor. Well, maybe not that. But, you know, basically from floor to ceiling, and you know the little side-firing woofers on that thing? To have them angled slightly toward the rear, and there'd be a pair of side-firing woofers. But not just two of them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, all the way from floor to ceiling. And if you look at it from the top, I'm going to draw a top view here in the air. This is the front, the ribbon's facing that way. So here's the ribbon, going like this. Then the cabinet starts and it goes like this, like a teardrop. It's like a teardrop with the ribbon going forward. And the little woofers mounted on the curving part of the teardrop such that they're tilted toward the rear a little bit, mostly side, and a little bit of rear firing.
So it'll be a line source.
It'll be a line source.
With the woofers facing the opposite direction, wouldn't the signal be out of phase by the time it reaches their listener?
No, the signals, it'll always be in phase because as long as both woofers are pushing at the same time, as long as the motion is this way, it's in phase, no matter where you are. Close, far away.
No, but I mean as
If
far as
they're going like
time
this,
alignment.
With the ribbon.
Won't it arrive, the base signal will arrive later than the one that's facing you?
Then the ribbon.
Then the ribbon,
Yeah.
a little bit. A little bit.
Probably
Will you be able to hear it?
So everything that
Will you be able to hear
low
it?
frequencies and
Yes,
so on.
you'll be able to hear it. It's part of the design though, because the ribbon and those little woofers are going to overlap. And what that shift, that time element shift provides, it provides our human hearing mechanism with a sense of acoustic space. Whenever we hear a loudspeaker, we always listen for a good one. We listen for an acoustic space, and I call it an acoustic space bubble these days. And we want to have images within that acoustic space in a pristine, beautifully delivered way. If we have images inside of a nothingness, it's not very fun, nor is it interesting to listen to. And the side-firing drivers develop that sense of acoustic space, and it does it through several mechanisms. One is the Bose effect. It bounces the sound off of the wall, and the reflected sound is measured in milliseconds, which is outside what's called the interaural time delay, which is the time it takes sound to go between our two ears. As long as it's outside of that, substantially outside of that interaural time delay, our hearing mechanism makes space out of it, makes a believable sense of three-dimensional acoustic space. We have binocular vision, but it takes two eyes for us to see depth. We have binaural hearing. It takes 2 ears to hear the three-dimensionality in the stereo presentation. And in a shorthanded way, I call that space. But I'm really talking about the binaural effects of the three-dimensionalities that we can hear when we hear music in real life. So we always listen for 2 arrivals per ear. I mean, per sound event, per ear. So it's, you know, 1 for this ear, 1 for this ear, 2 ears, that's 2 arrivals. And by spacing, now getting back to this time delay that we talked about, the ribbon will go boink and fire a wave towards us. The 2 side firing drivers will fire this same sound simultaneously to the sides. But there's the distance between the acoustic center of the side, and this is your question, right, I think. The acoustic distance between the 2 side firing drivers and the ribbon is about 1.5 inches. 1.5 inches, I think, is about 35 or 40 microseconds. I can't remember exactly. Speed of sound is 1,000 feet per millisecond, so if it's traveling this far, I can't do it in my head. But there's a slight time delay, but it's well inside of the interaural time delay, which I think is about 150 microseconds. I can't remember. If I had my calculator right now, I shouldn't be here without my calculator. I feel naked. But what our ear brain does is interpret that as space, something that's delicious and good and believable. It's not facsimile reproduction. Facsimile reproduction means if you had a real-life musical performance here and you played it through a pair of speakers, and if it were facsimile, the instruments would be located exactly in the same place. But if it's a believable reproduction, it means it could have existed in space and in time sometime in the past. And that's what I strive for, is a believable sense of acoustic space, but not facsimile reproduction because it's just not practical. That was my long-winded answer to your question. I apologize.
Are you suggesting no crossover in it then?
Pardon?
Are you suggesting you won't have to use a crossover?
No, there has to be a crossover. There has to be a crossover, and the details of the crossover are important to giving it the sound that I want. How many of you had an opportunity to listen to the little baby ribbons, cinema ribbons that they did? How many of you were able to hear in sort of a clear and distinct way the big acoustic space that they made?
That was my problem with listening to them. Everything else was going at the same time. There were when I listened to them,
Yeah.
there were other speakers filling in.
Yeah.
I would love to hear just them,
Yeah.
without the sub. I don't know if you gotta have a sub.
Yeah, they have to have a sub.
Okay.
Go down to 85.
Just them and a sub one.
So it's the side firing drivers that are creating the sense of space
That's
rather
right.
than direct radiating.
And I learned that from a guy named Henry Close. He taught me about the psychoacoustic octave, which is the bass octave.
It was pretty good.
Hey.
Yeah.
Is this anywhere beyond the idea stage at this point?
The floor
Yeah.
ceiling? Yeah, it's starting to get there. I've actually made sketches of it, and James is going to help me mock it out.
I think we're all very excited about that.
Yeah,
Is the shape for structural strength or the acoustic part?
acoustic part. It's going to be made out of carbon fiber,
That's awesome.
right?
So
I hope so. That's the plan.
Pounds is
I'm worried about him weighing too much. I don't think it's going to be allowable to put them on the floor. I think they're going to have to be. It's going to have to wire that goes up to the ceiling to hold them so they don't fall over and fall on somebody. 'Cause they, ugh.